From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your Professional Misfits. Hello friends, all the way from Sydney, Australia. I am your host, Christopher Sellers.
And from Portland, Oregon, I'm Brody Ipox.
And we are your Professional Misfits. And we're here at episode 10, the final episode of the season, Brody. We made it. We got past episode 3. We got to the end of the season. And we started to do an episode recap, ladies and gents. So we're going to do a quick recap of where we've come from, where we're going. We've already got season 2 mapped out. And maybe that's a conversation that we want to have with you guys at home, because we're still not 100% sure on the direction that we're going to take. We do have our themes and our episodes in mind, but we'll get to that as we get through it. But Brody, here we are, episode 10. Did you think we'd make it?
Oh, dude, it's bizarre because seriously, it was one of those things where, and I've had very few instances like this in my life. I'm not even kidding. Where I expected doubt, and I was questioning and waiting for it, but it was never present. You know what I mean? I was like, oh shit, like anything that came up was a challenge or a test, and we passed. And it's not even episode 3 for us. It was episode 4, right?
Right. Okay. So for the folks at home, okay, here we go. Behind the scenes. We'll draw back the curtain and we'll take you behind the scenes on the Professional Misfits podcast. Look, our whole sort of ethic for starting this in the first place is, life and professional life is messy. Like, this is the B-side. So we are going to have to live by example. So if it's messy, if it's complicated, if it doesn't go according to plan, then let's own that and let's do that. Where you're listening to episode 10 right now, and we're recording this the day after we re-recorded episode 4 with Tony Albrecht. And so that was the episode of Can You Change Careers and What Happens If You Do? So for a bit of Brody, do you want to he's giggling away in the background. So do you want to fill in the folks, or should I keep rolling with what this, train wreck?
Dude, I mean, I just want to say, like, it was, again, one of those things that just shocked me, where it was like, I think that was the moment, like, and we got to look at it, right? Because they say, and who was that? Was that Paul that was on our LinkedIn post to say 90% in episode 5?
No,
right?
I think it might have been, or it might have even been Tony himself. All right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, and and I kept thinking, okay, we're gonna see it, and how's it gonna feel, and again, it was one of those
Paul,
things.
You're right. He's like, yeah, because we got to episode 3 and it was going well, and he said most podcasts don't even make it to episode 3, and you guys are recording, up to 10 already, so you're doing really, really well, and
Yeah, and we got there, and seriously, you guys, episode 4, in all terms of like production, was a nightmare, and not due to Chris or Tony or even me, like it just was like a cascading set of perfect little storms.
Right. So we're, again, full transparency, we record on Riverside. That's the platform that we use to record all of this and distribute it, and no fancy setups. I'm recording on a Mac at the moment with a microphone and wide-in headphones.
Same.
Right.
Yep.
So, we start grassroots because that's the whole point of it. We got to episode 4, had Tony lined up in advance. Everything was cool. When we go to record Tony's episode weeks ago, at least 3 or 4 weeks ago, record Tony's episode, for whatever reason, Riverside didn't like Tony. And so anytime at all. And so anytime he would log in, it would keep him for 3 or 4 minutes and then boot him. And so we had no idea what was going on. You know how frustrating this can be whenever you're on an online call and, Janet keeps dropping out and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ. So, okay. Janet. And it was the first time us using Riverside as well. I remember that. It was.
The very first time. Yep.
So, and Brody had come hot and he's like, I got this new platform. It's going to be amazing. It's going to make life so much easier. So, all right. Okay. So Riverside isn't a go. Look, we'll just do it on Google Meets, man. So, all right. So we hook up all the links and get everything set. Now, for those who don't know, Riverside and some other similar streaming platforms require you to stay logged in at the end so it can batch upload all of your independent footage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's uploading in the background while we all go to Google Meets. And so then we do the episode with Tony and Google Meets. It all goes smooth. We have a great conversation, blah, 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 blah. We sign off. Thanks for your time. I don't think it was immediately after, or was it next day, Brody, when you sent me a message? He's got his head in his hands at the moment, ladies and gents. So he's...
It honestly was probably, okay, here's what happened. Okay, so great meeting, get done with Tony. Like Chris said, we sign off. I generally go and check, I'm like, okay, audio's good, video's good. We'll work on this tomorrow. I got there and I'm watching the video and I can't hear anybody. And I tried not to lose it. I went to Riverside. I went back to Google Meets. I was like, what is happening? And because Riverside was open, that was where my recording was being dictated. And we were in Google Meets. So that didn't work. And
so we had a full episode. An hour-long episode, and a good episode.
A fantastic episode.
With no audio. And we go, okay, all right. So, like, we're all adults. We're all professionals. At least I know Tony. Like, we're good friends. I'm a little bit embarrassed, of course. So, Brody's massively apologetic. I'm like, bro, not your fault. These things happen. I go back to Tony. This is what's happened. I even made a LinkedIn post about it going, hey, look, we fucked up. Like, what are the odds? And then Tony was gracious enough. Like, he's like, look, welcome to the podcast, Hall of Fame. Like, you're no one until you have to trash at least one episode. So we're all on good terms. And so, okay, great. When can we reschedule? Bear in mind, we're starting to release now. I think episode 1 or 2 are dropped and Tony's episode 4. So there's a little bit of a timeline. Tony doesn't get back to me for a week or so, or whatever else was going on. And then we finally got a date nailed down, finally got a time nailed down. It's been confirmed for at least 2 weeks. We go to record last week.
Yep.
And I get a message from Tony saying, hey, are we starting in 5 minutes? I'm like, no, bro, it's in about an hour's time. Now, again, it's devil's in the details. I'm in Sydney, Australia. Brody's in Portland, Oregon. Tony's in Toronto, Canada. These are three separate time zones we're trying to negotiate. So what is sort of 3:00 in the afternoon, or actually midday for me, is later in the afternoon for Brody, but a day behind. But then for Tony, day behind. And then for Tony, it's getting towards 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And he politely said, yeah, look, I'm out. Like, I love you, but I'm not doing a podcast till about midnight. Can we reschedule? And at this time, I grip my teeth and I'm like, you motherfucker, you've had this for 2 weeks. But I think what it was, because when the invite came through, everything would have been kosher. But 2 weeks later, we'd all gone through daylight savings. Right? What are the odds? And so it's so we actually go 1 hour each in different directions. So for us in Australia, we sort of go back and then we gain an extra hour's sleep or whatever it is. And then you guys, so anyway, Again, perfect storm, blah, blah, blah. And so I go back to Tony and say, all right, look, when we're on a bit of a timeline because we're actually releasing episode 4 next, when can we do this? And he's like, all right, Monday, which was yesterday, which we got it. And even then, Riverside still doesn't like Tony. And
just
we
has
tried
a problem with the guy.
Bruh. Every other guest we had has been fine. Gigi, amazing. Paul, amazing. You and I, no issues the whole time we've recorded. Doesn't like Canadians, doesn't like Tony.
Riverside, come on.
We tried 5 times. Tony had tried it in his studio. It didn't work. He went inside. It didn't work. It'd keep him for 5 minutes. It would kick him. Again, we went to Google Meets. And so then we're all like crossing everything going, Brody, please don't fuck this up. But he managed to work around and we got the audio. And so now, as we're recording this, we're literally rapidly editing episode 4 to get it out by tomorrow.
Yep.
And then we're golden for the rest of the series. And so if
Yes.
that's our perfect storm, and if we've managed it, you know, the magic of making movies.
Oh my God. And look, the thing is, it would happen with a guest, right? You know,
Right.
like, because it would be too easy if it was a problem between you and I. We've had our problem already, right? Like coming from the prior podcast, you know, and that's yeah, it's just a testament, and like it just makes me feel good, you know. And like I said, there's very few things that, you know, I'm rooted in confidence in. You know, there's always that underlying, you know, what if, you know, or this isn't working, or blah blah blah. But this one just feels good. Even when we're riding in the storm, I was like, no, it's gonna work out. Something where, and it, you know, and what's funny is, even if worse had come to worse, right? And the episode, for some odd reason, fluked, you and me would have figured something out. I know we would have. You know, and
I already had a bit of a backup in mind,
yeah,
but
and see, exactly, and that's where I was at. There's just that confidence in it, and I don't know how to get that, you know, in everything, but if I could, man.
yeah, I'd say it's rare as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, and there's been times where if it's been too smooth or too easy, and then later something fucks up, and you're like, oh, of course, I knew it, you know. But look, thanks for Tony for his patience and absolute good grace in handling all of it. But while we're talking about perfect storms, Brody, has there been any other highlights during the course of the last 9 or 10 episodes that really kind of stick with you?
I gotta be honest, getting to talk with Paul and Gigi and kind of being outnumbered by Australians, like, it was
I didn't consider that. Yeah.
I fucking loved it. Like, it was really cool, because look, I'll tell you one thing. You come into those conversations, and not uneasy is the wrong word, but you know, you're just not as stable. You're like, you know, there's cultural differences. Am I the pariah or the douche in this? Like, am I the crappy American? You know, whatever it is. And I know you, so I know that's not how you operate.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you wouldn't operate with people like that, you know? So it's like, I rationalized that, and I was like, I'm just going to come into these conversations as myself. You know, me and Chris have comfortable conversations. I'll center in that if I have to. And, yeah, it's just been really great. I was, again, having a conversation with a buddy, and don't get me wrong, it's not like we're all recluses and secluded, you know, from the world, but I think it's actually really rare that, you know, people are having conversations in different countries, you know, and especially right now. So that's been my big highlight, you know, like getting to peek into your guys' world and feeling that shit, I could be there and it'd be normal. You know what I mean? It's just a change in accent. You know, like, that's really all the difference is.
Well, I realized something today that hadn't occurred to me, and might not have occurred to you, and definitely probably hasn't occurred to the folks at home, but we've never met.
Mm-mm.
Like, in person. Like, I didn't know Brody from, you know, a hipster bar of soap from like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
So, and now here we are building this thing together for you guys. So it's cool. It's and it's definitely an interesting dynamic, because most podcasts are obviously in the same room, in the same space, sitting around a couch or whatever, or a couple of friends who know each other from wherever else. So we
90%
just happen,
of them.
Yeah. So we just happen to, excuse me, connect online and meet up with this last project, and still manage to kind of kick it forward despite time zone differences and everything else we've got going for us. Yeah.
Look, I wanted to ask you something. Inside this, you know, and I think this happens for everybody. You get on a journey, right? And we're kind of still in the infancy stage, you know, and we're walking through the first steps, and we're learning how to walk. And it's funny, because right around, you know, that time with businesses or, you know, passion projects is when you start to really align with your hopes or goals for this thing, you know.
Yeah.
what are some of those for you? You know, like, do
Ooh.
you see this being the Joe Rogan experience? Is this, you know, really, what is this for you, and how do you feel about it? And, you know, the hopes and the dreams side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. So it's given my background and profession, and basically a solo kid, there's not many creative projects I have been on where I've not been the one in charge. Like, this is my baby and I'm writing it and I'm producing it. So you get on my page and we all work out
Mhm.
fine. That's right. Now this is and you and I have had this discussion. Like, this is a very different dynamic where it's the two of us. So even in the begin, even in the beginning, a friend of mine joked about, like, how are you doing with, like, not having all the control? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. For now, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, but it's funny. But I trust Brody, and it's one of those things. Like, again, like, we don't know each other. I barely know each other really for a couple of months, like beginning of this
Mhm.
year. So if I was to unstitch that, like, there's no rhyme or reason or logical foundation for that, but I do. And so f- for those who don't know, like, Brody's the behind the scenes media marketing distribution fucking god. Like, he decides what platforms and where and how and analytics and all that sort of stuff. And this is knowledge and expertise I just don't have. So it's sort of like, I know what I can do and we know what I'm good at and know what I bring, and that seems to we seem to complement each other quite well. But the analogy I gave the other day was that, I I'm going on a trip. I've bought my ticket. I'm on the boat. Um, I know we're going somewhere. I'm not quite sure how long it's going to take or what it's going to look like when I get there, but I'm here for the adventure. So, and having the discussion that we had with Tony yesterday about having 20 different careers and everything else, it sort of fits my personality. It's like, I don't exactly know where I'm going, but I'm sure I'll be fine and I'll work it out as I go. But do I have any goals and aspirations for all of this? The honest answer is I don't know. Like, you see massive potential in it. I I would like to think so. I'm hopefully optimistic, but part of my doubt or fear or whatever else is, look, I don't know how grounded that is, and I only have your word for it. And you've got your professional circle who are like, dude, like, this is, you're onto something. And for me, I don't have that circle, so it's just you and I
Mhm.
talking on a podcast. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
I don't see it as a Rogan experience because no, thank you. Uh, I think we've got our own thing.
Yeah.
I To what you were saying earlier, like, it's been easy. The challenges has been easy. I said to you the other day, like, the work isn't a chore.
Perfect way to
So
put it too.
right, and so if we wanted a sign of, like, are we living what we talk about, I'd like to think this is a pretty good sign. Like, the money's not there yet. The endorsements aren't there yet. The audience and all those other, the lights and the cameras aren't there yet. But the work and the time in has been, um, more than a passion project, because both you and I bring a certain level of professionalism to the product that we want to deliver, and I
Right.
think that's starting to show.
Mhm.
While we're recording this, we've released 3 episodes,
Mhm.
and even just with the cursory 3 episodes, they seem to have been getting warm, intelligent responses. and
Yes.
and so that, again, that's a really good sign for us, because the conversations in the audience that we wanted to tap into and have seem to be responding early. And for me, who knows nothing about podcast and distribution, at least I go, oh, cool, like, you get what I'm talking about. But
Mhm.
if it's there from the very beginning without people having to go, what are they on about, why are they, misfits, what, um we're doing okay. So I guess I'm open to the journey, and I am starting to see the potential. Like, Brody's much more has much more of a vision for this thing than I do, which is again interesting for me because normally it's the other way around on 90% of the projects. But in this case, it's also a relief for me because I don't have all of this responsibility. And it's great that because we do complement each other well, like I am free to be proactive in certain areas. And if we're talking about strategy, like we were right before this call, which we might get into in a second, that's something I can sort of bring just to tweak this thing and make sure, like, well, if we're on course, like, let's get there in a cool fucking way rather than just do the normal podcast thing that everyone does. That's a very long-winded explanation.
No, that was good. That was good, and I appreciate the honesty because I think I look. I think that's the real side of this for a lot of people is you could get shit. You could get season 1, 2, and 3 down, and we've kind of had this conversation within the season. Is you can put in the work and not see results. That shit's scary. You know what I mean? That's terrifying because then you're like, oh my God, what is the breakdown? You know, and then you're really lost. So that unknown and the looming of it being potentially there, excuse me, is it's heavy. You know, so I'm glad that you were able to share that because I think a lot of people identify with that and in the same sense that I have for a long time too. And it might be a little bit different in the sense that I have a little more information. So when I know something's not going to work and someone's dead set on walking that path, it's, it's a little different, but in the same kind of ballpark, I'm like, we're going to do the work and it's not going to be what it should. It's funny. You said something in there. It's amazing. I think one of the things we should do maybe in season 2 in one of our, intermission episodes is talk about statistics and things like that. And right off launch, I mean, we've had a really great reception, and it's like you said, there's been very intelligent and engaged comments, with that too. There's been, 1 or 2 that's not the most pleasant, you know what I mean?
There's been one, and I
one,
screenshot it.
Yeah. And look, let's talk about that because that's the thing too. I think that's a big reason why episode 3 or 5 or whatever it is a big deal for people because now you have enough out there that the potential to have feedback is higher, right? So it's like, what just for you guys, a little context, this comment actually came on our first video and right before we launched episode 2. Like, so it was literally, we only had episode 1 and the highlights out. And it was like, we got our first comment that was not the sweetest comment, but how did that hit you? What was that like for you?
Thanks for outing me in front of everyone. So again, indicative of being a creative, I take everything personally first and then have to work backwards. Like, was it me? Was it something I said? Is it something we did? So I remember what part of the comment was like, oh no, like I wanted to like it, but like male bro culture and like blah 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 blah, and especially the Australian guy, like they singled me out, and I saw it.
It's just insane,
bro. Well, this is the thing, and I probably mentioned to more friends than I should. Like, I don't think I've ever been accused of bro culture in my life. I get assumed for gay more than I get. It's ridiculous. And like a girlfriend of mine is like, yeah, there's a reason. Like it's never come up. I'm like, okay, sure. So, and then I in a sort of professional sense, I took the screenshot to send to Brody because it's like, well, do we reply to this? Because you don't want to, if it's a troll, you don't want to bait them. And I don't even want to draw more attention to it because now everyone's going to go looking for the comment. But Brody straight up just laughed and he said, "Hey, look, love it or hate it, they watched the episode."
And they did. That's the thing. Even the negative feedback we've gotten has been engaged because look, it was it was a comment that actually was a formulated opinion. You know what I mean? And they also, for you viewers at home, pointed out that I say a lot, and
Oh, I
that
think that was
was
me. Was that you or
oh.
me?
I okay, well I don't know now. I
Both of
thought it
us,
was me.
you know?
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
for really
Bro?
though.
Bro.
So, they listened to the episode. They listened to the episode because you would have had to hear that more than once to register. And, and same thing too. I really do believe to formulate I like or don't like this, you would have had to listen to a bit of it. You know what I
That's
mean?
fair.
And that's a cool thing. You know what I mean? Even if you have the people that are uninterested, they're still engaged, which is like, same thing to them. You can love it or you can hate it, but here it is.
That's fair. I mean, getting back to your original point about, do we pull back the curtain on what it takes to build better an episode? I mean, you guys let us know. Is that something you want to learn about? Because like we're obviously um, objective and have no filters in terms of what we use, how we're doing it, how we are doing it. And part of our process is to build in front of you with you to show you, we're doing it because, and it can be done, and same applies in a lot of life. The episode as a topic is one of those. I know, Brody, you floated the idea to me a couple of weeks back about would I want to do the same with the book launch, because I wrote and self-published my book, Applied Creativity. And part of my marketing strategy for LinkedIn and for the audience was to run an open source transparent campaign, literally, of like, this is what I'm doing, this is how we're doing it. By the way, the catch is I'm not going to spend a cent. So can I self-publish a book for $0? In the world, I get, and this is directly as a fuck you to LinkedIn, because everyone's like, you need to spend 5 to 10 grand, and then you need a publicist, and then you need a marketing, and you need advertising, and all this sort of shit. And I'm an artist, and I'm like, write a good book. I'll invite people into the process. You can come along with the ride with me. You can be there for the wins. You can be there for the failures. And there was a lot of obstacles. And I even broke my condition of spending money. I actually I think I spent a few $100 because that was the bare minimum it took to do whatever. But it wasn't 10 grand, and I got it done.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I can demonstrate to you that it can be done like this, you don't have to buy into, again, the mold of this is what it takes to write a book or be a professional anything.
Right. Truly. And I mean, I feel the same way, you know what I mean, about marketing. And it's kind of funny because as this thing goes along, people will see, it takes effort. It's not just, we record these things and then they magically appear and
No.
people are interested. It takes a little bit of effort. And but that's the thing, we're not saying it's not achievable. We're not those guys that are out there saying you need this ebook or this 10-step template or
don't give it away. Make them subscribe to our email and then download our free ebook, and then
our gated newsletter.
and then we'll do a live session to upsell you to the masterclass, because that's where the real secrets happen.
Yeah, no, we're not. And I think that's the thing why this feels good for a lot of people that have been a part of it and have gotten to listen to it. And for us, because it's a reprieve from that noise. It is just that breath of fresh air that's like, holy shit, I don't have to doctor myself into this perfect image for somebody to accept me. Like that's it's tiring. You know what I mean? It is.
I'll qualify the other side of this equation as well. Is that I'm going to try and talk about us objectively. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason it looks easy and the reason it sounds easy. And to Brody's point is like, it's because it's structured and we actually have a little bit of experience in doing other things that we bring here. So there is a reason why 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. Whether it's individuals or teams or whatever else. Right. And we might have talked about this at some point, I'm sure, during this season. It's like structuring this first season, and we decided we're going to have 10 episodes, and we then had to decide, well, what are the topics for the episodes going to be? It's like, well, we'll give the first episode, the first series, a theme. Like, we'll make it professional development because this is who we want to talk to. We wrote out 10 episodes, hashed those around for a little bit. I thought, yeah, why don't we take an interval halfway through? Because that's fun, right? So rather than just talking about work all the time, can we talk about us too? And Brady's like, fuck yeah, it's a great idea. I'm like, cool. So we did that. And then we thought especially for season 1, we wanted to be the focus to be on us. So you guys would get a sense like of who we are and what we're about and how we talk, rather than bring on a guest every episode, because you can find that some people hide behind their guests or use guests to promote their own brand and platform and piggyback off that. And we didn't want to do that. And then we have episodes like episode 7.5, where people might not mind this, and Brody's grinning. We came to the table to record episode 8 on social media. 5 minutes before we're about to start, Brody's like, I've had a fucking shit day, and relationships, this and that, and kids and work, and I'm not really feeling it. And I'm like, bro, what do you need? Like, let's talk it out. And we got 2 minutes into it, and Brody went, fuck it, and hit record. And then you guys got like bonus 7.5. Right?
I did. I interrupted Chris and I was like, "Do you trust me?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm just gonna hit record right now." And
right.
Yeah, there was 7.5, and yeah, it kind of plays into that transparency that you're talking about. There's. I think the big thing about it isn't even necessarily any one individual personality. I think it's just the realness of a situation, and if you can translate that and you can be present in that and you're vulnerable enough to live in that, I think that's what people are connecting to, so 7.5 was, a big one. And then, again, even with 5, where it was just us and our conversation, like that was a big one for me. Like, this is stuff that people aren't doing, and I think it's because, like you said, there's somebody out there telling you the opposite. You got to do it this way, and this is how it looks, and you want people to see you this way or that way. And it's like, bro, my good Lord, when does the facade end? And here we are pulling back the curtain, so
yeah. So
season 1 has been a trip.
So speaking of which, we're moving into season 2. So here's where we're at, folks. It's like this is it. This is episode 10. This will be released in a couple of weeks' time. Brody and I are chewing on season 2. Our plan for season 2 is it's going to be all about relationships. So this is professional relationships. This is personal relationships. This is familial relationships, and also like the relationship you might have with yourself. So it's going to be a misfit discussion on, relationships and everything in between. Where it gets interesting is where season 1 was 10 episodes. Season 2 is going to be 20. So we're going to be recording at least 2 episodes a week. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and probably where we're going to need your guys' input, is we haven't yet decided whether we're going to, record 2 episodes a week to sort of get ahead of the curve, but then release 1 per week, because releasing 2 episodes a week is probably a bit much for you guys to listen to. Like, whether an audience has an attention span. Brody?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing too. I think we're you said it. We're just looking for the input, because as much as I have, my own expertise, I kind of have my own opinion, and I would love to have the availability there for you guys. I would love to have the access there for you guys, and especially the ones that want to listen or binge or however that's working for you. But same as Chris said, I don't want anything to get lost in, translation to where we're buried or things are.
Sorry, someone's driving the wrong way up my one-way street
again. What is this? Again. It's like every few episodes.
It is. So I'm breaking all the rules. So again, for folks at home, like I'm standing at my window, which looks out onto my street. My street is a one-way street. and then occasionally some tool will be driving the wrong way up
Is
my
not
wrong way street.
occasionally.
But right, and so all Brody sees is like my eyes squint and I'm tilting one side out the side of the screen, and I'm resisting the urge to yell at this dumb motherfucker. But and so I had to explain to him off camera the other day, like, that's what's happening when this is going on. He's like, right. And so it just right this moment. Anyway, so you were saying something very poignant, I'm sure.
No, that's okay. That's awesome. Seriously, for you guys, it is like there's been a couple times he does hold back, and I'm watching him. And I just have to go. Okay, remember, there's
That's
cars.
it. So if you've got access to the video version, you'll be able to clock it every now and then. Like take a drink every time Chris leans out the side. Like, what the fuck is going on? So season 2, yeah. So we're going to be recording 2 episodes a week. There's going to be 20. There's 20 episodes slated. And we've got about 18 subjects, so there's 1 or 2 that we need to fill in. I've also penciled in about 5 or 6 guests for season 2. So this is where the discussion gets really interesting, and we'd love you guys' feedback, because what I was talking about with Brody right before we came on, we figured we may as well have this conversation with you for episode 10, is let's say, Rogan or some author or someone cool comes along, says, hey man, like you're doing a podcast, it's awesome, I want to get a slice of it. Can I do an episode with you guys? If we've got 20 episodes mapped out, and all of a sudden someone wants to come in and do something, we either have to go, sorry champ, wait to season 3. It's not really the smartest thing to do for business or for them or sort of for everyone. You want to strike when that iron's hot. So is it a case of we have sort of 20 episodes penciled, and we leave 5 or 6 gaps for people to sort of fill in? Do you guys even care that the season? No, well, because we did this thing for season 1, and again it was specific, where we called our shot. Like, we're at season 1, next episode is season 2. This is what we're talking about. Next episode is season 5, 6, 7. So episodes 5, 6, 7. This is what we're talking about. So at the end of an episode, you knew what was coming next. Now, right. in my production mind, that's a savvy thing to do, because you want to tell an audience where you're going. Now, I might be wrong, and you guys might not care, and you might not listen to all of these episodes in sequence anyway. So you might just be down for the lucky dip of like, who's on next? What are we talking about? Let's roll. So do you prefer something that's structured more episodic? Or are you just happy to sort of roll with the punches? And if, we've got a cool subject, you'll listen. If we happen to have a cool guest drop in, then so be it. Like, Brody, how's all this sitting with you?
Yeah, no, give us the feedback, all the feedback in the world. And that's the thing, too, that I think is a little bit different about you and I as well, is I think we're really present in receiving that feedback. I think we both
Except
know that
if it's about bro culture. All right, I'll let it go.
I knew by the look in his eyes
that
that's what was gonna happen. Okay, yeah, no, I please, because seriously, this, for all intents and purposes, is for you guys. As much as Chris and I enjoy this, and in the long term, that I see goals and things that we could achieve. The mission that we've struck out on is it's not just self-adhering. There's something a little bit bigger to this. So as much as we can get you guys involved, let's do it.
Yeah, well said. Because that's what this was about. Again, and this is another thing I think it's just jumped into my mind, because I had been asked to do podcasts with a few other people beforehand, and at least having some experience in production and indie projects and all that sort of stuff. Sure, I'm open to it, but my first question is always why? And the first answer is always, to help people. And I'm like, yep, that's noble. Who? Who and why? Right. And then that's when they start to glaze over, because it's sort of like, if I grab my milk crate and I stand in the public square and I talk, I'm helping and people will listen. And you're like, look, it's a noble thought. It's a noble idea. It's vague, unspecific, not effective, and
Well, naive. It's just
a little
naive.
bit, a little bit. And I'm not here to shit
And
on, definitely not here to
no,
shit on anyone's idea, but
nope.
in terms of execution,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's like you said, you can go to the town square and shout all you want, but if there's, you don't have a mission behind it, and the people that come to listen don't have a next step, it's like,
right?
well, where and why are we listening to this,
And honestly, it's the same. This logic applies to a business. It applies
Mhm.
to writing a book. It applies to film and theater. It's like, well, who is this for? Like, what's the journey that you want to take them on? What's the story that you want to tell? What's the impact that you want to have? What's your message? What's your mission? That's the first thing before worrying about a medium. The
Right.
podcast is the medium, and that comes second or third, right? So
Hmm.
for us, I'm pretty sure like our medium was to sorry our message is the B-sides of professional life. Like this is
Hmm.
it's not the cereal box, right?
Yep.
It's something else, and we all live it. So can we not have this conversation about it? Can if you'll one thing in particular that pisses me off, especially about LinkedIn, and because I ran a group for it which died in the space of 6 months, was specifically mental health, right? So anytime anyone posts on mental health, it's always applause and you're so brave and so we should do more about this and people should really talk about it always. And I said, all right then, and then created a mental health group with again another friend of mine from the States, April Lewis. Hi April, if you're listening. So we created a group called A Different Kind of Happy, right? Because
I love
happiness
that.
isn't the cure for depression. It's a different kind of happy. So we created this group as basically like a professional support network where we're not offering medical advice, but every fortnight we'd have a topic. We'd have a Zoom meeting where we just openly discuss the topic, like how we're feeling, how it affects us. And, just at least if the first step is talking about it, then let's create a group that satisfied the first step, right?
Yeah. Right.
Logically, all makes sense. Heart was in a good place, all those sorts of things. And then, like most of these groups, it just attendance faded out and dwindled over the space of weeks and months. And it's ugly ugly reality that mental health, depression, and anxiety and everything associated with it, suicide attempts, all these sorts of things, self-harm, there's still a massive stigma of shame that people can't move past. Well, yep, there's still a massive stigma of shame that looms over people openly discussing it. And that's what pushes all of this into a corner. And it was really, really disheartening for me because I'm massive suffer from mental health in my own way, massive advocate, realize it's completely personal to every individual, much like creativity. So there's a lot of parallels. Want to offer some sort of just professional support completely. It was a support group. It was unpaid. There was no
Mm-hmm.
finance in it. And still it just sort of fizzled out because people wouldn't show up. I
Well,
don't know
that's one of
how
the
and why I
hard.
got into this conversation, but here we are.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I think it kind of just it was led into the perception and looking at this thing outside in, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people, specifically with mental health, are terrified. I think it's terrifying, and I saw something on LinkedIn the other day. Took everything in me physically not to engage with this post. And not going to say who it was from, but basically it was on the grounds that don't show up and talk about your life because the professional audience is looking. And yeah, I seriously, like I said, it took everything in me physically, even not to like, I had to like hold back my own hand, like from
Right.
going to the
Yeah.
keyboard. Because what an awful place to put people in, and look, the thing is, a lot of the CEOs, CMOs, CFOs that I've actually gotten close to they're some of the most stressed out people in the world.
Of course.
And it's like that same notion. They feel they don't have a space to speak on it because, and don't get me wrong, leadership does need to be strong, right? But that doesn't mean leadership can't be transparent. That doesn't mean leadership can't be vulnerable. That's God damn, such a high standard to hold someone to, and especially when in our worst moments, that's all we want is to be able to be vulnerable and accepted.
Right.
So it's just a bizarre dynamic, and it's like you said, I think a lot of people are just scared of the shame that accompanies it, and yeah, I'm hoping that's a little bit what of our conversations do, because let's pop the lid on this thing because it's not the truth. Like it's
Well, yeah, and silence has a cost. Specifically
sometimes very heavy.
right, and specifically in mental health, that's the biggest one. But it's that slow boiling frog analogy, and that can be stress, that can be relationships, that can be money. Again, all the things we've talked about this series, when not spoken about, become your slow boiling frog, and then it gets to a point where something breaks or you get sick or something it all falls apart, and it's like, well, how did this happen? It's like, it didn't happen overnight, right? Or relationships with your kids and all these sorts of things. Here's for the folks at home, right? Here's a cool thing about Brody. I can't get a hold of him at the weekend. You know why? Because his WhatsApp's off and he's not on LinkedIn because he's spending it with his 4 boys. And the first time that happened, I thought, oh, okay, that's what's going on. And then just had to swallow it and go, yeah, this isn't urgent. It can wait. Right. And that's that. Now, there's been, I think, once where I'm like, hey, I know it's the weekend. Can you quickly take a look at this? So it's whatever. And then he's available, but he's available in his own time. But weekends, I can't get a hold of Brody. Right. And we have a production meeting at the beginning of the week. We record twice during the week, and then we sort of wrap up at the end of the week. But weekends is unavailable. So here's a guy that's got his own business, got 4 boys and a partner on the other side of the world, has his priorities straight, in my view.
Somewhat. And look, I appreciate you saying that. And I will say this. Look, because of the stigmas, because of the grind culture, because of a lot of the, preconceived notions of building something, there's generally an expectation to ditch those priorities.
Right.
And I've seen it, you know what I mean? I've had conversations where someone's like, hey, I can't reach you at this time. Can we change that? And it's like, you have been extremely accepting, you know what I mean? And that's a credit to who you are, your ability to assess a situation, and then also bring priority into our relationship, where it's like, hey, he's got these things and this is where he's at. I know that's where he's at. I'll thank you forever for that, because there's too many people out there. And again, this kind of falls in line with, the message of the podcast, that think, other things need to come first. And really, if there was a priority in your life that I was, for instance, if you were headed to a swim, I wouldn't be like, hey, Chris, can you not head to your swim? Do this for me first. You know what I mean? Because that's
one of these days I might have a date and I won't be able to talk to you, bro.
Yep.
One of these days.
And I love it. I will love it. Yes, I will. I'm gonna stream a bunch of messages to your WhatsApp that are turn off your WhatsApp.
Funny, for some reason, what we're talking about, it reminded me. Was it when we were talking to Paul? It might have been, and he mentioned, the guy that dies with the most money still dies, right?
Yep.
And I dropped that exact line to a guy in the cafe like 2 or 3 days ago, because he was looking to merge his firm with like a larger firm, and basically he would be set and be able to step out, and it didn't go through, and he was sort of not regretting it, but like he had to pull out of the deal, but like financially it would have been a great thing and would have been really, really well off, and he was sort of, lamenting not having this win. Mm-hmm. And I was actually praising him on his values, because he understood that he'd basically be a dancing marionette for the next 10 years, and that wasn't really going to work for him. So he made the choice to go, well, okay, this isn't going to work out, despite how profitable this might be. And I said, and he was like, oh yeah, but like the money, Chris, the money. And here's a guy who's married and got 2 kids, lives in a nice area. And I'm like, sure, but the guy who dies with the most money still dies. And he looks at me, and unlike you and Paul, he goes, yeah, but he's got the money.
Oh, interesting.
And, right. And I just had a moment. I had a moment, kind of like what you're having now, and went, all right, I'm just going to leave it there. There's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do. Interesting.
Okay, I don't have to convince you, but like you've already made the decision. All right.
Yeah.
And sort of to your point, I guess there's a ton of folks out there who might have this mindset, or are definitely working with, around, or for people who have this mindset. And if that works for you, great, but it'll work for you until the day that it doesn't.
Right. Yeah, no, and look, it's funny, circling back to the fact that we were recording episode 4 last night. This is episode 10. That conversation with Tony led to a really cool place, where, objectively, you're not entitled to happiness either. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's the huge misconception as well with all this stuff. Like, it is, people just assume that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then happy's the result. And it's like, bro, happy's an experience that you will feel along the entire journey, at points, and there will be
in
points.
Patches, in bursts. It's not a constant.
No, and it never will be. You know what I mean? It never will be. And some stints might be longer than others, right? And some might even feel sustainable. But it's like you said, something's going to come along, and it's going to work until it doesn't. And if you're not doing something that A, is fulfilling, or B, you're passionate about, and the context of why is money, I think those are going to hurt more. You know what I mean? And you have less to fight for when it's gone. It's how do you pick yourself up when the incentive is money, and money's so far out of reach? Like, it's it just doesn't seem like the right play to me. But like you said, to each their own. And I understand that there's those two different perspectives out there. And when you said that, it hit me, I think, probably like it did for you in the cafe. I got to leave it. That's, you're right.
I was a little bit in shock as well. I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
So looking forward, my man, looking forward to season 2. So folks, what can you expect? What can you expect in season 2? So here, I'll give you a quick taster of like what we're talking about. And like we're talking about everything, nothing's off limits. So we'll be talking about, what work relationships, what makes a good business partner. Like Brody and I might even talk about, like, we might have had a fight by then, who knows? Like, do we work well together? And if so, like how? We're going to talk about collaboration in the workplace, which I think is going to be a really interesting episode, because I've got a guy in mind who's ex-US Air Force, who's big on the teams. And I've had a discussion with him before, because he's really for collaboration. And me specifically, if you've read Applied Creativity, I dedicate an entire chapter to why collaboration sucks for a creative process. So that'll be a really, really interesting conversation. We're going to talk about, how do you make friends as an adult? Because I think that's something that's talked about, it's lamented everywhere and joked about everywhere. But, and can boys and girls be friends? Right? We're going to talk about toxic masculinity, and is there such a thing as toxic femininity? We're going to talk about family, and like whether you can work with family, whether you should ever work with family. We're going to talk about work-life balance, and like guy like Brody with 4 kids, like how the fuck do you manage it? Because I can barely take care of myself, and you're taking care of like a partner and 4 boys and doing all the things. So there's a lot, basically relationships, the ins and outs, the depths, the sweet and the sour of relationships. Brody, is there anything in particular on your hit list that you're looking forward to for next season?
All of it. And I'm not trying to generalize. It's just like, we've said, this is the B-sides of all of this too. There's those cliche, topics and formats that you get into, those cliche conversations and almost too agreeable. I don't think that's going to happen in this season. I think, we're going to have some conversations that drive separate perspectives, and I'm excited for it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I am too. Like, looking back from just what we were talking about earlier in this episode about like what I'm looking forward to or what plans that I have. So, and I'm not, and still I'm not quite sure, but I know that I'm looking forward to season 2. And maybe it's the production side of my brain that, because I know it's mapped out and it's in an episodic structure that I mapped out, it just makes me feel comfortable.
You did a fantastic job as well.
You're a nice guy. But for those, for the behind the scenes nerds, like, you need to have a plan. Like, none of this is purely off the cuff. Like, pure impro is generally trash. You need to have a certain structure to kind of keep things moving. And that's all this is. It's a loose enough structure for Brody and I to bounce off and know what topics we want to hit in order to keep the conversation interesting for you guys. Because it's not about us. We can have this conversation offline and talk shit, but to make it of value, or useful, even constructive, rather than just masturbation on a podcast. Like, let's, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to season 2 as well. Looking forward to season 2. At the time of recording, we don't know whether we're going to take a break between episode 10 and then first episode of season 2. So stay tuned for that, guys, that you might know. Here's a secret little something that I might tease. There's a secret page on the website. So our website is promisfitspodcast.com. The secret page is /guest. So you can go to promisfitspodcast.com/guest, and it will take you to a guest booking page. And what I've laid out there is basically the 20 episodes that we've got in mind. And some of these will be for Brody and I. Some of these might be for like 1 or 2 guests that I've already got sort of semi-confirmed. But a lot of them are going to be open to you guys and to the public. So there's a booking link there as well, but I might even just make it a feedback link for you guys, because if there's some episodes that you definitely want to see, and if there's some episodes that you have a friend or a contact or a guest that you think would be like an amazing host for, then shoot us a message there, or even in the comments wherever. On YouTube, we'll find it. On the Professional Misfits podcast LinkedIn group, that's always a good place because Brody and I are all over LinkedIn. So we'll both see it. Because we'd love to get your feedback, because this is what we're looking to build for seasons 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, everything else. Is we're building this with you guys to make something that you want to listen to and actually build a viable channel. Brody, how's that sound to you? Because I know I dropped this on you about 5 minutes before we press record.
I love it. And look, this guest page was actually Chris's brainchild, and I'm the marketing guy, so I should have, in all intents and purposes, had that kind of somewhat outlined. So I have nothing but appreciation for the effort that he's put into it, and I think the way that this is going to work for you guys, it's going to be cohesive and user friendly. So, anybody, like you said, Chris, anybody that's got an interest, anybody that feels like there might be something or an opportunity for someone to come and speak from, a place of value, or even just from their heart, send them that way. And I think this could be a really cool asset for the podcast and for our guests as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Bittersweetly, that's the end of season 1. That's it. There is no more.
Finish line.
That's it. Think of a witty catchphrase. So, in the meantime, I've been Chris.
I've been Brody.
And you stay classy, Misfits. We'll see you at season 2.